Hello, everyone, and welcome to an interview episode of the SWW show. I'm Mike. This here is Ken. Ken, if you could tell us where you're from and what game you're here to talk about?
Yeah, so I'm from Vancouver, Canada. Recently been working on Cloudlands 2. It just got released on Steam, and before that, it initially got released on Oculus Quest. So now that it's released on PC, we're just going through some bug fixes and hopefully get a couple more updates out there.
So Cloudlands 2 is, I'm gonna assume, a sequel to Cloudlands. I'm just gonna make that assumption just off of the gate immediately. So you play mini golf, kinda? So I've got to ask, why did you decide I want to make a game? Let's go make mini golf.
Well, I guess initially for Cloudlands 1, it was, I work for Future Town, so I actually joined a couple months after Cloudlands had started development. So it was, it was, I'm not quite sure the thought process, but there was a lot of prototypes going in. This was before the HTC Vive came out, but they were partnered, or they were, like, HTC got in contact with them to make some games for the launch of it. And so one of the games was a mini golf game.
Right, okay. Which for the record, I think it's for sure a very interesting thing, because I think one of the VR specialties is to go let people go experience things in unique ways that they want to do, but, like, can't always do, which is why, like, if you could do, like, that's why Rec Room is really popular, because if you could go to the YMCA without going to the YMCA, or getting the group together.
Yeah, and that was, for Cloudlands 1, well, Cloudlands 2 also has more than just mini golf. It's also has, like, chipping and driving, but we can get back to that in a bit. But so Cloudlands 1 originally, was kind of just a virtual way to do mini golf without having to go all the way to mini golf kind of thing. But then eventually we kept having more ideas, so adding things that you couldn't actually do in like a real mini golf place, like having multiple levels, standing on glass to see through things, having cannons shoot out, having, like, spinning things, knock your ball all around. So it's kind of both being able to experience mini golf in the comfort of your own home, but also expanding on what you can do, like extending to things that you couldn't actually do in real life.
First off, if I want to get shot off a cannon while playing mini golf, I will get shot off a cannon while playing mini golf. This is why we live in America. We have freedom. I understand there might be Canadian safety laws against that, but that's a different story entirely. So then obviously it was successful enough for you guys. Now we're talking about today is Cloudlands 2, which you said, I want to make sure I'm correct, and I think you told me this too. It initially released on the Quest, and then now is migrated basically to all the other big platforms.
Yeah.
So, initially, I got asked the fun question, as we'll get into the differences, is starting with the Quest versus other platforms is always the initial hit of, like, performance and all of those logistical problems with it. Did you guys run into any of those major things, or is it surprisingly efficient, you think, going from being used to at least the powerfulness of the PC onto the Quest?
I think the Quest is surprisingly powerful for what it is. It's essentially just like a smartphone that's, like, dedicated to running VR games, but even considering that, it's quite powerful for what it is. So for the performance for Cloudlands 1, after it was launched, Oculus announced their Oculus Go. So this is kind of the first standalone non-PC VR that they were doing. They also had the Samsung Gear VR, so you could snap your Samsung phone into a little contraption and you can play VR from your phone. So for Cloudlands 1, we decided we wanted that to be on the Oculus Go. So a lot of those performance issues we ran into during that version. So we made Cloudlands Mobile, which was on Samsung Gear VR and Oculus Go, and that took quite a lot of work. We did run into performance issues for a lot of development. So one of the major things we had to do was kind of basically redo all the art, make everything lower poly, have like the level of details scale quite a bit, reduce a lot of the textures and the shader complexity and things like that. A lot of it was the graphics. So then we eventually got that running on the mobile platforms. And then a year or two later, they announced that they're going to release this other standalone device that would be basically PC. So Oculus Go was 3 degree of freedom VR. So that means it doesn't track you around the room. It just tracks the rotation of your head and the controller.
Which,
so this new
I was gonna say, which is always interesting because I feel like when it's done correctly, even though I know because I've developed a few things for the Go, is it doesn't you can't move the controller traditionally, but if you're smart with how you're rotating it and depending on the object you're holding, it still feels right with the Go.
Yeah, that's one of the more proud things that I was on the on Cloudlands Mobile is translating, in the PC version, it's like you're swinging a club. So how do you do that when you can't? The controller isn't tracked, it's just the rotation. So we did a way where you kind of first you set your angle of the club, and then the rotation swings the club. So you can, if you wanted to, you could pretend to swing the club, and it would still hit the ball, and it would. I think it felt quite nice.
Which I think is impressive. So, like, one of the things I had to do was, like, I just do something kind of similar, but we did it with, like, a hammer. And that was another one of those, like, how does this feel right? Because people instinctually want to kind of arc their arms instead of doing, like, a straight turn. And so I'm curious, did you have that, so, like, in that version then, did you still let people try to do the old-fashioned kind of with, like, a turn, or is it just the new change you did for hitting it with the ball?
We do have the option in the game. It's a little bit buried in the settings, but you can toggle to, I forget what we called it, like unconstrained or free swing mode. That does it's hard to describe it in just words, but you rotate it and it kind of swings like the putter head around a circle-ish. So you can do you can emulate a swing with your hand, or you could just do it in place. But in that way, it is easy to miss the ball, which I think is why we didn't have that default, and it's kind of buried in the settings because it takes quite a lot of getting used to, and it can be frustrating if that's like your first experience with the game.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. So then after mobile, I assume you guys jumped onto Cloudlands too?
Yeah. We had a couple prototypes going on because we didn't know about the Oculus Quest for a while, but then when that came out, it kind of made sense to revisit Cloudlands because one of the things for Cloudlands Mobile that we had to take out was the level editor, because it would be hard to get that working performance-wise in many other control ways. And we wanted to release on the Oculus Go launch for Cloudlands Mobile. So we took out the level editor for Cloudlands Mobile, but for when the Quest was announced and it was 6 degree of freedom, so your head and controllers were tracked, we wanted to put the level editor back in, and it just made sense to, instead of just porting again to the Quest, we thought we'd make a whole new game and add new clubs and new levels and everything like that.
Nice. So yeah, so Cloudlands 2, so obviously I have to compliment you. The initial thing, as you guys talk about, is how you made everything available from Cloudlands 1. The big thing I want to talk about then is, so you made a comment about then with the level editor, and this is new for this experience. Why did you feel then the Quest was a good platform for it, with the obvious ramifications of trying to have people build things in VR?
it's kind of just the freedom of the 6 degree freedom VR from the PC, but now you can bring it anywhere. And so it was like, I don't know, it was just awesome.
Then obviously I'm gonna at least make an assumption. Then building that amount of freedom with the editor then had other ramifications of making it feel right for users. If you could talk about some of those challenges that I assume you faced.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of the decisions we made about the editor, like the fundamental ones, kind of made it through from the very beginning, like kind of grabbing a piece from like a shelf or somewhere and then dragging in the level, and then having to, especially for the mini golf parts, like have all the floors connect, so we needed a way to snap all the pieces together and things like that, and add a bit more custom, like able to vary the level a bit, so added rotations, and now you can scale things in Cloudlands too. So those fundamental things actually stayed pretty consistent from the idea to the actual execution of it. There were a lot of kind of programming hurdles to go through, like if you're interacting in certain ways, like you're grabbing one piece, but there's a couple other pieces that are selected, and how do you move those all in 6 degree freedom and make it all work, but not, and you only have a couple buttons on the controller, so having it all not too hard for the player to learn.
Yeah, that is always a very interesting thing of so one of my things I always find interesting is I call it VR literacy. So, and maybe speak of this when you're building this stuff. So like I always talk about that, like nowadays if you hand someone of a generic, the normal demographic of like 18 to 25, an Xbox controller, I basically can guarantee they understand the fundamentals of joystick, button, something like that. Where VR stuff, I think we'd both agree, you can't make that assumption. You have to almost be concerned that your experience might be the first they see. So I'm curious with that, what maybe your challenges were even in the editor or just the playing of it being in this platform?
Yeah, so for Cloudlands 1, we took it around to a couple conventions and had people play it a lot of times like early versions before like VR was really out yet. And a lot of times before we even put them in the headset, we'd tell them what to do, because it was like early version. We didn't have polished tutorials or anything like that. And a lot of times you'd tell them the controls, and it was only like maybe one button, and then you just swing the controller. But like, I don't know, at least half the time people were confused about what to do, because they were just in this new experience virtually, kind of wanted to look around, and then they kind of forgot.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to an interview on the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today I have with me a special guest from a place not quite anywhere near me. So can you tell me your name, where you're from, and what game you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ilya. I'm originally from Russia, but I live in Japan, in Kyoto. And I'm working on a tactical RPG game called Shores Unknown.
So,
Thank you for having me.
yeah, no problem. So I gotta ask the first question. You said
Sure.
you grew up in Russia and then moved to Japan?
Yes. I've been living and working in Russia until 29, I think, 28 maybe. Basically, I moved to Japan in 2016.
Okay. So did you just move just because you wanted to live in Japan?
No, it's more than that actually. I wanted to work in Japan specifically. I was working in Russian game industry for like 7-8 years before I decided to move, and basically what happened is at some point, just from my interest in Japanese stuff, I started learning the language kind of randomly as a hobby. I already knew English back then. So that was my third
I was about to
language.
say, so you have to be trilingual. Then that was one of my things. I'm like, you have to be if you do that. I was
Sorry?
I was
Can you
gonna
go-
say, just logistically, I was wondering, I'm like, you must be trilingual, so like that has to be a whole fun feat on its own.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have been bilingual pretty much like for the whole life. I started learning English like pretty much at the same time as I started learning Russian, more or less. Yeah, but Japanese, that was a conscious effort.
So I've
So
gotta
yeah.
ask, because maybe it just gets lost when it comes to the West. What is the Russian game scene like? Because obviously I know what the Japanese game scene is like, but the Russian is not one I feel like I hear about.
Yeah, Russian game scene. That's an interesting question, actually. So when I was starting out, it was in the middle of a crisis, basically, and a lot of big studios that were working on like actual consumer games, like big games, stopped doing that. So we didn't have big consumer games for a while, right? And most of the development was focused on like mobile games, browser games, free to play stuff. So, and I started as game localization QA actually. Helped basically check the translations of a variety of Western games which were being released in Russian. Games like Settlers 7, Supreme Commander 2, and so
So
on.
so do a lot of Western games actually go to Russia, or is it like a very limited swath?
No, lots of Western games in Russia in general. I mean, we're getting most of things that are released, and nowadays, at least, I think almost everything is getting translated into Russian, as long as it's big enough profile release. Small indie games maybe don't get translated into Russian, yeah, but overall, plenty of games available.
Oh,
Though personally, I've always been playing games in English for I don't know whatever
I
reason.
guess it helps you learn I guess it would, in theory, help you learn English if that's not the thing you use always too.
Yeah, that's how I did learn a lot of my English, and that's also how I sort of learned Japanese as well, playing games.
You like just make yourself play Japanese RPGs. By the end of it, you're really fluent in that era of Japanese.
Yeah, precisely. And
So that
I mean, it at least it helps you. It teaches you how to read. It doesn't really teach you how to talk, but for that you need other things like people.
so you decided then. So you moved to Japan. You work there now. So now you're working on Shores Unknown. Is that how you're pronouncing it?
Right. Shores Unknown.
So, so I got a demo of it. I got to play and stuff. So you calling it a single player tactical RPG? Um,
Right.
So the first thing actually I noticed, which I'm curious about, is so the audio design actually of the experience. The thing I actually immediately
Mhm.
noticed is, were you a fan of like the Lord of the Rings online game?
Not really.
Like, I don't know why. Legitimately, I got that vibe like immediately, even from like some of the sound design stuff behind the game.
That's interesting. I mean, the sound design, so like the actual sounds of the game are very, very placeholder at the moment. The music, though, the music is being made by our amazing Spanish composer called Claudio Martinez, and maybe he's a fan of Lord of the Rings Online. I'm not sure. I will have to ask after this interview.
It was just one of those things that like that was my immediate thing when I started it. I was like, this just has that weird like, I would say mid 2000s like Lord of the Rings like game vibe when it came to like how the audio was playing and stuff.
Okay, that's interesting. I've never played Lord of the Rings Online, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know how it works worldwide, so maybe that gets lost in translation. So one of the things I talk about, so when you pitch the game, you say it's an innovative grindless battle system. How do you define that as like still a tactical RPG and evolutions, but like making sure your game is grindless?
Right. So our characters, they automatically progress as you participate in battles. And we don't have like random encounters as Japanese RPGs often do. Instead of that, all our battles are like predefined, so it's closer to Western RPGs such as Baldur's Gate, whatever. And you can't really grind, but you grow your characters as you participate in normal combat and in normal activities. So yeah, that's what it means, I guess.
So how do you control like balance of the game, and if you want any difficulty curve, if they're set battles and not random, for example?
The general idea is that you have side quests. Again, kind of like Baldur's Gate. If you feel that your party is underpowered, you can always go and do some side activities to sort of obtain better loot, gain some more experience, and so on. But that's optional. So the idea behind it, the difficulty curve, is that you should be able to complete the main story without having to, go out of your way to necessarily complete side quests.
So
You can if you want to, but you don't have
So
to.
have you noticed then, as people are playing, is that a thing where a lot of people are maybe choosing to do in some capacity, or is it very much that you feel that a lot of people are going to more go towards the streamline of the game?
At least, well, from my experience showing the game at like conventions, which is definitely very different to the experience people are getting playing it at
Obviously, yeah.
home, because everyone is, time pressed, right? But everyone just focuses on the main story. Like if you have a mini-map beacon saying go here to progress your quest, 95% of times people will just go for that and completely forego any side activities, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay,
yeah.
'cause I'm always
Yeah,
curious,
yeah.
because like, especially when, like, I feel like that's been a trend the last, let's say, 5 years or so in RPGs, is trying to make things less and less grindless. And I always feel like it's a really hard thing to like get right, with there being some level of balance behind it.
It's definitely a hard thing, and I mean the balance for our game is also very much in flux at the moment. Like I will probably be doing a whole complete pass on the balance once we're done with the main story content, and just retuning all the numbers just to make sure that it's all good.
So
Because right now I think it's pretty difficult at times right now in certain combat scenarios, and then it gets pretty easy in some others. So like the curve is a bit all over the place.
So what do you feel your goal is, maybe? Do you feel it should be more like a thing that I could rush through, or do you feel that you want to at least make people at some point have to either do some side quest to keep up leveling, or like have a thing that's hard to get past?
We definitely want the players to do at least some side quests, and so I think we're going to have some difficult encounters, which you'll still be able to like beat them if you get lucky in the battle itself, like with good crits and so on. But normally, if you're not like super lucky, you'd probably be better off like doing a couple of side quests, getting some better gear, and then tackling the main quest encounter.
Interesting. Okay. So
Yeah.
jumping kind of to the next thing I had question-wise is, so the art style, I think I would give you, it's very distinctive, I'll say. Especially we've
you.
had a rise of, I think, some low poly games recently, but I think you guys found a way to still like stand out in the way you're designing that world.
Okay, I'm very happy to hear that, because that has been a struggle for us, definitely making sure that the game stands out.
So
And
I'm curious, where
yeah,
did
go
you
ahead.
come up with? I assume part of it's an art constraint thing too, but where did you come up with choosing this style and kind of the decisions you made along that path?
It's a funny story, actually. So, like, when I started working on this game, and the way I started working on it is actually at some point, while still working like a full-time game designer, game developer job in an office, I was working in Unity, and I decided to start learning Unreal Engine on my own, also as a hobby of sorts, right? And I did some tutorials, whatever, and then I started trying to make my own, combat system.
Mm-hmm.
And as that was taking shape, I was talking to my friends back in Russia, who were also working in game dev. And one of them is a level designer, and he got interested in the project that I had. We started kind of collaborating on it, the two of us. We started making some levels, and then what happened is I was checking the Unreal Marketplace, and we found those Cinti Studios Polygon packs, which look amazing for low poly, and you've probably seen them as well. You've probably seen a bunch of games that use them. They look great. We didn't know that a lot of games used them back then, so we bought a few of them, started making some levels, nice low poly-ish stuff. We released an early prototype alpha kind of thing on like IndieDB and GameJolt, so that random people could play it. People loved it, and then we started noticing that basically a lot of games out there are using the very same models that we do. And we were not really okay with that. So basically, yeah, we started tweaking the style. We started remaking the character models, basically the main actors of the scene. We started remaking from scratch just to make sure that they were still kind of blending well with the overall low poly feel of the game, but they also looked and felt unique.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point after we released the public alpha, whatever you want to call it, we started receiving some interest from different publishers, and we ended up signing with a publisher to help us with this game, funding in particular. So, and once some money started flowing in, we were basically able to hire, contract 3D artists and so on. So we were able to produce our own unique assets, while still, keeping everything in the same low poly style.
So,
But we,
so at this point, are you guys mostly using then in-house assets, or do you still have some residue of those past packs in it?
We still have the residue of the packs. Normal rocks and stuff like
right,
that.
Yeah.
Things that, things that are not, the hero assets of the scene. We are fine keeping them. Keeping the assets from the packs, because like no one really cares if you have like a bench, which is also in another game, right? It's just a bench.
No one cares. This podcast was a product of the SWW show. You can find more at the swwshow.com or facebook.com/the SWW store or twitter.com/SWW. You can find out more about Mike at Mikey_Maroney on Twitter, and more about AJ at Losivor on Twitter. Remember, new episodes come out twice a month, one focusing on the new entertainment news, and one focusing on movie club, so new and an old movie. You can find out more again at the swwshow.com, and you can find the show on podcast services around the globe.